to another episode of the GAA Statsman early. And in today's episode, we will focus on this weekend's football championship action, the first weekend back. It's Easter, and we're back in football championship action. It's strange to hear that. And by the end of the video, we'll also discuss the Allianz Hurling League final between Limerick and Kilkenny on this channel as well. I'm delighted to be joined by Aaron Prendergast from GAA Fan TV. So first of all, Aaron, how have you been over the last few days? So the championship is back at Easter. Strange feeling, but it's great to be back.
Yeah, no, great to be back. Great to have the games back. I suppose, yeah, like probably is a bit weird having the games so early on, like on Easter weekend. It's kind of mad. Like the league just finished and straight into the championship. But no, looking forward to this weekend's games. Like a lot of exciting games. Mayo, Roscommon, two big rivals, two teams that know each other inside and out. You know, it's mad. It's two of the top three according to the National Football League rankings playing each other this weekend. Cork versus Clare, I think is going to be another game worth keeping an eye on. Disappointing it's not on TV, but at the same time, I think that's two sides again that are very familiar with each other. And then seeing New York obviously back is always good, and seeing some of the players that they might have available this weekend, I think makes that game versus Leitrim a little bit more interesting. So yeah, no, looking forward to this weekend's games and excited to be on.
Yeah, absolutely, and delighted to be back as well for the championship action. And we will start with the main event happening on Sunday at 4 o'clock on RT2. Mayo against Roscommon in Castlebar. Big game this, considering like it's first in the league versus third in the league. Technically, I know Roscommon fans would kind of beg to differ, saying I heard Dara last night in your channel saying that it was kind of a shock for Roscommon fans to finish as high as they did. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting game, this one, despite the fact that Mayo performed excellent in the league throughout.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I think it make it's two big rivals. And as you said, like Mayo, I think Mayo could have been playing anyone in the country this weekend and they would have been favourites. But the fact that Roscommon are going in, in equally not as good form, but in terms of where Roscommon have come from, obviously coming up from Division 2, and you think of that defeat to Clare at the end of the league or the championship last year. And look, Davy Burke's got them really well organised, really well tuned. They're in flying form at the minute. And now, like I think if you're a Roscommon supporter, you'd be you'd be excited for this weekend's match going into it. I think like Mayo have been in flying form and they probably are on form, the best team in the country. But no, I think it's going to be for like an extremely interesting game between the two sides. Like you'd certainly give Mayo the edge at this moment in time, but like looking at Roscommon, that battling quality that I think Davy Burke has brought to them, I think has been brilliant. And they've battled their way through a lot of games this year, and I fully expect them to stay within touch and distance of Mayo. Would probably expect Mayo to edge it, on the day, but I think it wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world if Roscommon won the game.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be a very interesting game, and I suppose a lot of people are mentioning the point as well that Roscommon had the second best defence statistically in the Allianz Football 1. It's kind of a bit defensive in Division 1. Is that kind of a sign that Roscommon will play defensive football, despite the fact they have to like Dermot, Conor Cox, Keith McKeown off the bench as well. They have excellent forwards, but will they play a defensive type of style on Sunday?
I think they probably will, yeah. Like because when you've looked at a lot of their games this year, like I think the main thing for Roscommon has just been staying in games, staying within touch and distance, and then it's kind of been in the final 15, 20 minutes where they've pulled away. You think about it against Tyrone, there was times in that match where they were behind, they were trailing by Galway by 4 or 5 points going into the final 15 minutes. They were losing to Armagh at halftime. They breezed past Donegal, but I think majority of sides when they've had their best team out have done that to Donegal this year. So no, I think their tactic probably will be to sit back a little bit and absorb pressure. And I don't think they'll be defending for the sake of it. I think they'll still be on the front foot. They'll still be trying to move the ball quickly with pace when they have it and try and make things happen. You won't see Roscommon play sideways, backwards hand passes. Just to slow the game down or take the sting out of Mayo. I think they will, when they have the ball, they'll go for Mayo's throat and try and make something happen. But I think like with the game being in Castlebar, the form that Mayo are in, the confidence of some of their footballers, I think it would be the worst case scenario for Roscommon if Mayo got an early goal or went 6 or 7 points up in the opening 10 minutes, because with the confidence that these Mayo players are playing with, they're only going to get better, throughout the 70 minutes. And it just becomes a much tougher task for Roscommon with the supporters as well. Obviously, with it being in Castlebar, like it's probably going to be 3/4 Mayo fans. I know Roscommon are a very well supported county, but Mayo fans will probably fill that stadium out. So it's going to be tough for Roscommon. But yeah, I'd imagine like with Davy Burke, when you look at how they've set up at times this year, even going away to Galway, like they've been, like they've sat in, they've tried to absorb pressure, and they've tried to stay in games and then hit teams on the break at times, and it's worked quite well for them. They're 4 wins on the board, and I think looking at how Galway set up against Mayo, I think Roscommon could mirror that a little bit and try and really sort of take the sting out of Mayo and frustrate them as much as possible.
It's an interesting point, yeah, because Galway Mayo, of course, was a defensive game in that Division 1 final as well. And is that kind of a scenario? Do you think, going back to last week, now, do you think Galway were more defensive on Sunday, or were Mayo defensive? Like when you look at the stats, Mayo only scored 4 points for play in that final. And is that a sign that they're just grinding out games? It's no shame in doing that, because obviously they didn't win the All-Ireland playing expansive football.
Yeah, I think we're just seeing that there's different elements to Mayo's game. Like I think in fairness, like when we watched them through the majority of the league, they probably have been very, chaotic and played, swashbuckling football and that sort of very athletic style play that you normally associate with Mayo. Like when they played Tyrone, they blew them away, playing, went on the front foot, went after them, just attacked them relentlessly, pushed up on kickouts, and it was real sort of full throttle, heavy metal football, shall we say. And it was the same against Kerry. Same to a degree against Armagh, but we have seen them at times as well. Like when they need to sit in and when they need to defend and they need to change up their game plan, they're able to do it. And look, all the best teams do that. Like Dublin done it through the years. Through that 6 in a row spell, there was times where Dublin would have to sit in and defend and really make life difficult for the team we were coming up against. And I think, in fairness to Mayo, that's what they done against Galway. Like I think Galway were, both sides were set up very similar in many ways, and like Galway were set up quite defensively, and they were sort of moving the ball a lot quicker and trying to play through the lines and kick it into Walsh and Comer when he came on and try and make something happen quickly. Whereas Mayo were probably more keeping the ball and trying to just wait for openings. And I think that's how I would see this game going as well. Because I think Galway probably looked at it and thought, with Comer being injured, he didn't start the game. You obviously had Shane Walsh, who probably looked very good in fairness in the final, but probably hadn't kicked into gear up until that point. A few other potential injuries in there for Galway as well. So I think Galway probably looked at it and thought, we're not going to go toe-to-toe with Mayo and Croke Park, because if we do, they could blow us away in the opening 20 minutes. So we'll stick with them and try and just snatch the victory. And I think it was probably the right approach. And in fairness to Mayo, like they were very patient. They didn't panic. They didn't hit, silly passes or anything of that nature. They did it on the odd occasion, but generally speaking, they were very calm. And yeah, there was definitely a lot of frees. And as I said in my review, I think a lot of those frees were a little soft. But I think at the same time, they were fully deserved victors. And I suppose it's good from a Mayo perspective to see that they can change up their play when needed.
Yeah, exactly. So, and if you're going to call this game on Sunday, who do you think will do? Do you think Mayo will do it as expected, or do you think Roscommon? Like Roscommon have done it before. I remember 2019, Mayo specifically, they won the league, and then the next game they lose to Roscommon in Castlebar. So, could the same thing happen again?
Yeah, and interesting enough, like I've seen a statistic there where the last 4 times Mayo have won the league, they've lost the opening game of the championship to Roscommon. And in 2019, when Mayo played Roscommon, Mayo were coming into that game on the back of winning the league. So, and that was in Castlebar as well. So, like, there's a few omens maybe that point towards Roscommon pulling off the victory. Certainly in 2019, and I don't think anyone would have expected Roscommon to beat Mayo that day, and they did. So, look, I would give Roscommon a really, really good chance. But I think Mayo by 1 or 2 points. I think it might be a similar game to the Galway game. To be honest, there mightn't be any goals in this game. Just when you look at how Roscommon might set up, how Mayo will probably deal with Roscommon's attack as well. I think Roscommon will probably need a few goals just because when you look at how much they've scored over the course of the league, it has been quite low, especially like at their average per game. So I'd give Mayo the edge by 2 or 3 points, but look, Roscommon will be in there for the full 70 minutes, and I'd be surprised going into the final 5-10 minutes if the game is still up for grabs, or if the game wasn't up for grabs. I could expect Roscommon still to be in with a shout. So go with Mayo by 1 or 2 points, but no, I think Roscommon do have a strong chance. And look, Roscommon will go into that group stage as pot 3 team. They'll have a nice break between now and the group stage. And they'll go in there as a team. Like no team is going to want to draw them in that group stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I'd probably go for Mayo win as well. They're probably too strong, and like the Connacht title will definitely be on their radar. A lot of people saying that the Connacht title is meaningless in a way, but at the same time, like Mayo, they'd want pot 1 football, because like if they get pot 3, they could get, I don't know, a Dublin on form, a Kerry, maybe even a Tyrone, and that could be curtains for Mayo early on the year, So they definitely want to go out and win the Connacht title, definitely. And the other 2 games in Connacht, the horse, we have the Exiles, the 2 Exiles in action over Leitrim, 11 o'clock on GAA Go live in Gaelic Park in New York. And I'm here, Mark O'Shea and Michael Murphy will be on this game on GAA Go, according to Paddy Andrews anyway, for the football pod. So like, it's an interesting game, this, when you think about it. Like, Leitrim had the top scorer in the whole league with Keith Byrne, scoring 5 goals and 52 points. And when you look at New York, have few interesting names being brandished about. Obviously, the team hasn't been named as we're recording this. Like Gavin O'Brien, I think, has been named from Kerry. There's a few others, like Bill Maher from Tipperary's has been as well. Alan Campbell for Tipperary as well. All are the semi-finalists, them 2 players from 2016 with Tipperary as well. So there's experience in the New York team individually, but the question is, can they mold together as a team and beat Leitrim? Because this is a big opportunity for a big scalp.
It definitely is, all right, yeah. And I've seen Adrian Varley, I think, is still in the squad as well. And he was obviously, a former Galway footballer, and he played very well against Sligo last year, in fairness. Yeah, like I think it's a tricky one for Leitrim. Like, when you look at it on paper, and Leitrim going through a full National Football League campaign, and playing tough games, and it will definitely stand to them. But going to New York, look, it's one of those games that you go to. You're playing on a 4G pitch. You're traveling 8 hours over on a flight. There's jet lag. It's also a great occasion for a squad to be over in New York, probably going out for a few beers and everything else. It's a great occasion, but you do see teams at times who've gone there and struggled. Roscommon nearly got beat a good few years ago. There was times last year where I thought New York were going to turn over Sligo. And like Johnny McGeaney, their manager, like he set New York up very well last year and made them very, very hard to beat. And I think that'll be the same case this time around. They'll be set up to frustrate Leitrim. And it'll be a tough test. It'll be a tough test for Leitrim. It'll be a tough test for them. Probably still give them the edge, but New York have got a good few players there. And see, the problem with New York though is like there's a lot of unknowns there because we haven't seen them play. So like they could really surprise us and completely blow away Leitrim. They've got a lot of good players, and I know they would have been they would have been preparing this game probably for they probably would have been training for this for the last 6 to 8 weeks, and probably had a few challenge matches with other clubs within New York. But it's just tough for them to prepare. And yeah, you'd give Leitrim the edge, but again, like I think New York nearly bet Sligo last year, so I wouldn't put it past them if they did do something.
Yeah, and especially with the game being on national television as well, so it's a brilliant opportunity for New York to pull off a shock, if any. But you'll be still going for Leitrim in this game. You think the likes of Keith Byrne, Tom Pryor, and all them will do the business?
Yeah, I think so. Like I just think with the opportunity that's there for Leitrim this year, the fact that they could get to their first Connacht final since 2000, if they get through this game and play the winner of Sligo London, it's just a huge opportunity. And I think if they were to lose this, it's just it's a massive backward step, I think, for Andy Moran and for Leitrim. Like you can excuse not getting out of Division 4. It was tough and it was very, very close in the end. It's probably a kick of a ball between them and Sligo. But yeah, I think it's a massive win game, and no, I'd fancy them to get through.
Yeah, you'd probably have to fancy them to get through, all right. Even though New York, I'll give them a very good hope. It'll probably be a point either way, I would think. But definitely Leitrim should win the game anyway and come back to Ireland with a win and the Connacht semi-final appearance. The other semi-final between London and Sligo on Ruislip on Saturday, I think at 5 o'clock or sometime like that in the evening. So unlike the New York and Leitrim game, you'd have to expect Sligo to win easily. You looked at London in the league, 1 point out of a possible 14. The only point coming against Wexford away from home. And then again, Wexford are being inconsistent. We'll get onto them later. But like London struggling this season despite the introduction of Enda Lane from Derry, and you'd have to expect Sligo, especially after winning division last weekend in Croke Park, to ease through really.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think there's a good couple of injuries. I think in that London side, I think Endelin might be injured. I think a few others maybe might be injured as well, from what I've heard. So it's just been a bit of a setback for London this year after what promised maybe a promising league campaign when they drew with Wexford in the opening day of the league. But yeah, no, you definitely back Sligo all day long. I suppose the only thing is Sligo were playing last week. Could they take their eye off the ball a little bit? Could there be an element of complacency making that trip over to London as well? You'd still fancy them to come through. And you still fancy them to beat London by, 7 or 8 points. But, with it being in London and, when these two have played each other in the last couple of years, like there hasn't been that big of a difference. I just think London have probably suffered a little bit with injuries, but yeah, I think when you look at the progress of Sligo this year, and again, with what's on the line, with the fact that a Connacht final is possibly on the line, I'd fancy them to win it comfortably.
Yeah, I would as well probably. Like the only issue with Sligo really is the fact they played a Division 4 final last week and they might be tired after it. That would probably be the only issue, and maybe London could capitalise on that if they were good enough. But unfortunately, I think London have gone way back since last year, and Sligo should win this game easy, maybe about 5 or 6 points, maybe about that, and Sligo should get into a semi-final against Leitrim. And we move on to the Munster Senior Football Championship. The game that obviously stands out is Clare against Cork, 2 o'clock in Ennis. The game isn't live at the weekend, but luckily for all the social media goers, I am going to the game, so live stats will be on the game, half-time, full-time, and whatnot. So big game for both sides, especially for Clare, because if they lose this, they're in the Tailteann Cup. For Cork, it's kind of a big game as well, as me and Daniel Gooning were chatting on the JMAC podcast earlier in the week as well. Like, if Cork lose this, it's a major step back. And it's going to be a big game for both sides.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I think it is, and I think Cork have probably broken their voodoo a little bit over Clare in the last couple of seasons. Obviously, beat them in the league this year. I think beat them in the league last year as well, from what I remember. So I think Cork have certainly broken their voodoo a little bit over Clare. It was a comfortable enough victory over them in the league. The thing is, though, like it is a very tough one, though. Like going to Ennis is a very difficult place to go to, and like with Cork, like you don't know what you're going to get with them at the best of times. Like they've got tremendous amount of talent in their team. Like they've got brilliant forwards in Brian Hurley, Stephen Sherlock, who probably hasn't been in great form this year. Maybe suffered with injuries ever so slightly. You've got Cathal O'Mahony, Conor Corbett, Ian Maguire. I think I made the case yesterday that Ian Maguire might be the best midfielder in the province in Munster. I think it's maybe a debate for a different day, but I think he's definitely in the conversation. So like there's a lot of very, very good players in Cork, but it just seems to be every now and again in games that you're expected to win, you slip up in. Like Meath, for example, in the opening game in the league, against Dublin, nobody expected anything from you, and he's nearly beat us. Against Derry, you were 8 points down, finished, game over, but then you come back. So it can be strange with Cork at the best of times. The games we expect them to win, they don't win, and then the games where we don't really expect much, they'll win. Even Kerry going back a couple of years ago is the perfect example, and then losing to Tipperary in the Munster final. So yeah, you never know what you're going to get with Cork, but I think just with the fact that there's so much on the line here, I think you'll be guaranteed a Sam Maguire place anyways, with the fact you finished above Kildare and Meath, so you should be okay. But I think at the same time, like, you need to be winning this game just to, kind of show that you are better than Clare. You are at least the second best team in the province, and especially with the players that have come through, the progress that has happened with management. You want to be getting to that Munster final, and also as well, you'll get yourself a second. You get yourself into pot 2, which could arguably say is actually worse, because when you look at some of the other teams that might be in pot 2, but at the same time, I think for Cork, for the progress, for the county, I think they need to win this game.
Yeah, they probably have to win this game, and as you said, rightly so. Like, you don't know what to expect with Cork. They put up a good performance against Derry or Dublin. They lose the load of meat, and like, I was even frustrated after the big game, and rightly so it proved, because you looked at like Cork have to win this game completely. They have to, because if they don't, it's going to be a major step back. But at the same time, and won in Ennis of the league as well, and one of the championship obviously as well. That would have been should be winning this game throughout. And like, just to be clear, going to Tailteann Cup that it wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily for Clare to go to the Tailteann, but the third bad idea for already chat predictions that Clare would win the Tailteann Cup, provided obviously Cork beat them in that Munster semi-final. So, like, going to the Tailteann Cup, despite the fact that Clare are brilliant players and reached an All-Ireland quarter-final last year, it's not particularly a bad thing for Clare, is it?
No, it's not the worst case scenario, I don't think. And I think they've got good enough young players as well. Like, you've seen a lot of them obviously represent UL, obviously in the Sigerson Cup. So they've got a lot of good players within the ranks, Clare. Emmett McMahon is a very impressive player. They still have experienced lads in Gavin Cooney, and Cleary. And you have them as front runners to get out of Division 3. I think they're, very, very early favourites, I think, in Division 3 next season. So yeah, like, you definitely, and if they were to go on the Tailteann Cup again, like, the exposure to get to Croke Park, playing Croke Park twice, although it would be, the factor in an All-Ireland quarter final last year, like, it would be a bit of a step back. But I think at the same time, like, there is murmurings that might be Colm Collins last year, and if that is the case, what better way to go out than win the Tailteann Cup in Croke Park? And you think as well, like, there might be a scenario maybe where the Clare hurlers get to a All-Ireland semi-final or final. What a weekend it would be for Clare GAA if they were, say, Tailteann Cup final on a Saturday, and maybe, All-Ireland hurling semi-final on a Sunday. Like, the exposure it would get, and you'd entice Clare fans to come up for it. So, no, like, I think that it's not, it's not the worst case scenario, and that's why it's kind of a win-win. Like, there's no pressure on Clare to win this game, and I think that suits them down to the ground. Like, all the pressure is on Cork. The game is in Ennis as well. So, yeah, like, it's going to be very, very tough for Cork. I would narrowly give them the edge, but I wouldn't look past Clare. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be an incredibly tough game for Cork, and we'd do very well to get out of Ennis with a win. And we'll have to play to our top level, as Daniel and myself mentioned in the GMAT podcast earlier in the week. Cork have to play to our top level. If they don't do that, they won't get out with a win. I'm tentatively saying a point win for Cork. A lot of people are saying 3 or 4 points, but I just think it'll be very tight game. And Clare are going to give it to all, definitely. They don't, like, I know the Tailteann Cup is a prestigious trophy in its own right, but Clare players, so, like, it's going to be a very, very tough game for Cork to get out of Ennis with a win. And the other game, well, it is meaningless when you think about it, because the winners of this, Tipperary against Waterford, Semple Stadium at 2:00. The winners of this play Kerry in the semi-final. So, enough said about that. When they play Kerry, but you would expect a Tipperary winning this game. I said the JMAC podcast that Waterford win this game as my bet of the week. But what do you think about this game yourself?
Yeah, like, I was going to say Waterford would win it last night as well, but then when I kind of thought about it a bit more when speaking with Dara, I was kind of thinking, I think Tipperary surely should still have enough. I think Tipperary could be playing any other side of Munster this weekend, and I think they would lose. And I do think that Tipperary are probably, when they go into Division 4 next year, like, we'll see what the scenario is with Conor Sweeney and his injury, but I don't think they'll be getting out of Division 4, to be honest with you. I think the era of tip football as what it was, unfortunately, I think is over now, and there's going to be a rebuild there now over the next couple of seasons. No, look, Waterford will fancy their chances. Like, out of all the teams to be playing this weekend, they'll look at this and think, you know, we have an opportunity. They drew a Tipperary in the league last year as well, so like, it's not inconceivable that Waterford don't pull off the win. You know, it's definitely not inconceivable, but you just think with Tipperary playing at a higher level in Division 3, you know, although the majority of their squad that won the Munster title a couple of years ago are not there, there's still a few faces in there. They still have the same management, you know, still have the same principles. So you'd surely expect they'll have enough to beat Waterford, especially at home as well in Thurles, which I think is another decisive factor. So we'll go with Tipperary, but as you said, yeah, like, it's kind of, I suppose, you know, it is one of the major loopholes in the some of the provincial championships that they're playing Kerry in the next game. It's a bit like Laois Wexford in Leinster. The winner of that then plays Dublin. You'd nearly wonder why these games are even played, but at the same time, you know, what can you do? You can't change certain provincial championships just because one team is so far ahead of the rest. It's one of those anomalies, or one of those things, unfortunately, that are part of the provincial championships. But at the same time, you know, it is what it is. So yeah, I'll go with Tipperary to get the win.
Yeah, you think so? You definitely think Tipperary will get the win, but you know what? Because it's such a shock victory, and you know, you say it once in life. I'm just going to go Waterford to beat Tipperary. I'm just going to say it, and hopefully, if Fitzgerald proves me right by the end of this weekend, anyway. So should be an interesting game. But as you said there, the winners play Kerry. It's a bit of a meaningless game, but we'll see how both of them will perform. Will they rest their eggs for the Tailteann Cup? We'll have to see over Sunday, definitely. We'll move on to the Ulster Championship next. Armagh against Antrim in a box at the Athletic Grounds at 5 o'clock on Saturday night, live at the BBC Two Northern Ireland, that game, so should be a good watch. Well, maybe in a sense it could be, because Antrim put it up. Obviously, they beat Cavan in Division 3, and you look at Cavan in that Division 3 final, and they were absolutely excellent, and Antrim beat them. So, like, I know I'm clutching at straws here to say that Armagh could struggle, but you'd have the feeling that if Armagh play defensive football again, it could be a bit of a tricky situation they find themselves in, despite the fact that Antrim are a bottom level Division 3 team.
Yeah, I think if Armagh play defensive football here, I think I think McGeaney should probably just pack his bags, to be honest, because like I think like you've got to go after Antrim. Like they've by far better players, they've by far better squad players, better players in their team. Like I think if you go toe to toe with Antrim, like Armagh will beat them comfortably. Like Westmeath beat Antrim by 31 points earlier in the year, and I know that game was a bit of an anomaly because it was a strange game, like because Antrim didn't really have those type of defeats throughout the league. But I think Armagh should be putting the sword to Antrim and really putting out a convincing victory as well. I think if this is a 2-3-4 point win, I think you're starting to get worried about Armagh. And I know like Antrim did beat Cavan, as you said, but I think Cavan already had promotion wrapped up at that point. The rest of the team, I just don't think they were really interested in. I don't even think they were interested in the league final either, to be honest with you. This thing Fermanagh just didn't have anything about them to go for that game. So I'd fancy Armagh surely. I think by 7 or 8, it could be more. But I think if you're Kieran McGeaney, if you're one of those Armagh players, you want to put out a statement win here, because they need to build confidence. And it's probably actually good having this game before the Cavan game, because it's a chance to build up confidence. We don't know what's going on with Rian O'Neill, but I doubt he'll play this game. He might maybe come off the bench for the final 15 minutes or 10 minutes if they need him to. But it's a great opportunity for other players. Maybe Keane McConville, who's been outstanding for Crossmaglen the last couple of years, but has hardly had a kick for Armagh. So what an opportunity for him to throw him in and give him a bit of game time in a game like this. So now I'd go Armagh by maybe 8 or 9 points, but like I think if they do mess around in this game and play a little defensive, I think Armagh are in a really, really bad place.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to play attacking football. No disrespect to Antrim in this game, and Kieran McGeaney really has to buy his ton of small bits and play attacking football. You would expect Armagh to win this game probably by 7 or 8 points. But an interesting thing on on the team announced by Armagh last night, on Thursday night, as we're recording this on Friday. Jared O'Burns was named on the bench. So was Aidan Nugent. Rian O'Neill wasn't named on the panel. Is that anything to go by, do you think? Is that kind of a worry in the Armagh camp that Rian is still not on the panel, or do you think they're just saving him for the Cavan game?
Yeah, it's hard to know, to be honest with you. Like, you don't really know about these things. Like, you hear rumors, and like sometimes when you hear a rumor, a lot of the time there is some sort of substance to it. It might be over exaggerated, it might be far fetched. But you'd wonder, like, is it in, like, because it's just weird the fact that he was announced as injured. They said he was going to be out for the entirety of the Ulster Championship. Then he was named in the panel. Then he wasn't in the squad. It's just a little bit weird. Like, if a player is really badly injured, you don't name him in the panel. And I think if McGeeney and the Armagh management have done that on purpose to fool Tyrone, I think that's that's just poor form, in my opinion. Like, if they've actually gone and done that, like, I think that just makes zero sense to me and kind of ruins the integrity of the game a little bit. But yeah, like, I think so I don't know. Like, it probably is a chance for Armagh to try out different players. And they do have a lot of possibly intense games, like Cavan coming up, maybe then possibly Down or Donegal, and if they get through that, then an Ulster final. So maybe McGeeney's looking at it and thinking, we'll try a few different players out here and see how it goes. We should still have enough to come through Antrim, which is not the worst idea in the world. But the only problem is if it does backfire, and if going into the final 15-20 minutes, it's only 1 or 2 points up. But yeah, no, I wouldn't read too much into it. But it is interesting going to see what happens with Rian O'Neill over the next couple of weeks, and whether he's in the squad for Cavan should they beat Antrim.
Yeah, it should be interesting in the next few weeks, all right. And yeah, it is definitely a suggestion that they're saving him, but it's kind of a stupid
We have you back now, I think.
Yeah, as I was saying there, that should really fix the problem before jump to conclusions or anything. And yeah, it should be solved even after the Antrim game and before the Cavan game, definitely, because Cavan, should they get past Antrim, of course, is going to be a very, very tough game for Armagh. And we move on to the Leinster Championship. To be honest, like, there's a few meaningless games in here, but there's just two games that are quite interesting when you look at the sides of the draw that both sides are on. You have Wicklow playing against Carlow and Aughrim on Sunday. That's one of the games. The winner of this plays Kildare game. Just considering Wicklow, they did very well in the Division 4 final last week. Carlow, when you look at them in Division 4, they were very scoring 47 points of their total. So yeah, it should be. Well, it should be. It shouldn't really be an interesting game. By looking at the league form, it should be an easy. But at the same time, like, Carlow could easily turn up. Niall Carew has done this before. You look at Tipperary in the Tailteann Cup last season; they turned up and won the game. So, like, Carlow could easily cause the shock, but you have to expect Wicklow to pull through here.
Yeah, you definitely would. Like, interesting enough, when these two played each other in the league, it was a draw and the opening day of the league season. But no, you would look at it, and you'd certainly look at Wicklow as the favourites here. Like, I think they've, when you look at, they were looking very good against Sligo at times. 6 points up, I remember, at one stage. likes of Kevin Quinn and Owen Darcy look like two very good young players who've come into the fold. And I think Wicklow are in good stead. So you definitely fancy them to beat Carlow. I think for the progression under Rushy McConville, I think you would expect them to be too strong, especially at home as well in Ockram. But look, in fairness to Carlow, like, you know, they do have a habit every now and again of pulling off the odd result, but I think this might just be a bridge too far. So we'll go with Wicklow for the win.
Yeah, I'd probably go Wicklow as well. I think this could be probably the most the biggest hammering is Carlow. Very reliant on the likes of Dar Foley, Ross Dunphy, in fairness, got 1-9 from play, but like Wicklow, Luke, Kevin Quinn, Owen Darcy, Mark Jackson, they're brilliant players all over the field, and I just think Wicklow will have enough in the tank. The next game is, as we said with Tipperary and Waterford, this is a bit of a meaningless game. I'm sure you mentioned this earlier on, Aaron, as well. Laois against Wexford in Port Laois on Sunday. The winners of this play Dublin. And Wexford played Dublin in the last 2 seasons. And, well, in fairness, one of the years they actually put it up to Dublin during COVID times. But last season, it was absolute whitewash with Wexford scoring 4 points. So, you'd like I went up at this argument at the GMA podcast during the week as well, that both sides could be going into the game rather losing it rather than winning it, because you need confidence going into the Tailteann Cup, and taking a big beating off Dublin isn't really in plan for either of these teams. So what do you think about this game yourself? Would you rather actually lose it rather than win it?
Yeah, it's a hard one. Like, I'd imagine for management and the players, you definitely don't approach a game like wanting to lose it. But I do understand your train of thought. Like, it's a bit like Tipperary Waterford as well. Like, going into a game against one of the best teams in the country, and you know you're going to be on the receiving end of a hammering. At the same time, I'm sure the Laois lads will want to test themselves against Dublin. You know, few new Laois players in that team. They'll want that experience of playing Dublin. I'm sure the fans will want that experience of bringing Dublin to Port Laois. I think it's a good while since we've been there now in the championship. So, yeah, like, I think it's a difficult one, because like we've played Wexford in the last 2 seasons. Obviously, last year we absolutely hammered them. The year previous, Wexford actually played quite well that day. So it's a tricky one. Like, I think to play Wexford for the 3rd year in a row in Wexford Park, I don't think Dublin fans would have a particular interest in that. I don't think Wexford fans would want to see it. I don't even think neutral fans would want to see it. Laois, at least it's a new team. It's a new place to go. So there might be something a little bit unique or, different about that experience. But yeah, it's you're looking at it and thinking, whoever wins this one, is probably going to be on the receiving end of a hammering. But then again, you never know. Like, if Laois can win the game, go to Port Laois and keep Dublin, maybe they end up losing the game by 6 or 7 points, but they could take a lot of confidence from that going into the Tailteann Cup. So it's an opportunity as well, maybe to put up something. And although like Dublin will beat whoever wins this game, but Laois and Wexford will probably look at the likes of Clare putting it up to Dublin and Croke Park, Loud putting up a good performance. It was only a couple of years ago that Laois and Wexford were close to their levels. So I'm not saying that they will put it up to Dublin, but at the same time, it's an opportunity, and I think you want to be winning games at the end of the day. But I probably would back Laois, I think, by the smallest margins.
Yeah, like it's kind of a game where it's kind of hard to talk about stats and things like that to divide an opinion on who's going to win the game, because, as you said, Dublin down the line. Like, I don't think either side would want to play them and to go into the Tailteann Cup. Like Laois, like you look at Laois's players, for example, they could realistically win the Tailteann Cup, and if they get a beating off Dublin, it could be detrimental to them. And like it's going to be interesting to see how both sides approach it. I'd probably expect Laois to win it in the end, but at the same time, it's going to be an interesting game to delve into. Definitely interesting in the wrong way, by the way. But going into the last game of the Leinster Championship, Longford against Offaly in Glenn Brothers Pierce Park. I know Offaly have the better players. They probably have the better team ethic as well. They perform better in the league. But I was thinking about this during the week. The game is on Pierce Park. That probably is do you think that's kind of a leveler in Longford's favour? Because like Pierce Park, it's a hard place to go for any team, really, and no matter how good they are.
Yeah, like, I think this game might be closer than people think. Like, it was only when these two played each other in Pierce Park in Longford in the league, Offaly won that game by a point. So it wasn't like Offaly beat them by 6 or 7. And I do think Longford are better than where they finished in the league. I think they are a Division 3 team. I think things just went really bad at the start of the league and they struggled for form. And, I think things went on a slide very quickly for Paddy Christie and he wasn't able to turn it around. Still think they're a good enough side for Division 3. So you'd still fancy Offaly. You still would, with the young players that are there and Keith O'Neill and, Jack Bryant and these lads. Anton Sullivan's been a mainstay for the last couple of years, Bernard Allen as well. So you'd fancy Offaly. You would fancy Offaly to come through Longford. But I think at the same time, Longford at home, championship game, fans will be up for it. It's, two sides that they're not necessarily rivals, but they are kind of, close-ish to each other on, geographically speaking. So I'd fancy Offaly, but Longford at home could make a bit of a fist out of it. And the fact that Longford did beat Antrim on the last day of the league, they have that monkey off their back. They've won a game. And I think, the opportunity of playing Meath in a Leinster semi-final, which, let's be honest, Meath aren't looking too good either. So, whoever wins this game might be looking at it and thinking getting to a Leinster semi-final is not impossible. I'd fancy Offaly, but probably only by 2 or 3 points.
Yeah, it should be a very interesting game, all right. You have to expect Offaly to win the game, but again, like playing the game at Longford, it will be a big leveler, and definitely Paddy Christie will be up for the game, but you have to still expect Offaly to win the game, and it should be a win for Offaly, and they'll face Meath in the quarter-final if they win this game. So, yeah, it should be an interesting game. We will discuss that as the weeks go on in the championship. Obviously the final weekend of the Allianz Leagues, and it is the Allianz League final between Limerick and Kilkenny on in Páirc Uí Chaoimh at 2 p.m. live at TG Car. Big enough game? Well, not really, because like both sides will be definitely going towards the provincial championships. But then again, like Kilkenny are, along with Galway, well clear in Leinster, and when you look at Limerick's team all over, the panel really, Limerick are much clearer Munster than any other team. So, like, in a way, do you think this game will probably be like a good practice run towards going into the All Ireland Championship?
Yeah, it could be all right. Like, I think it's a massive game for Kilkenny in particular. Like, I think the chance to beat Limerick in a major final, claim a piece of silverware. But I think at the same time, like Limerick have looked more like championship Limerick throughout this league, and that's even with a lot of their best players not even playing a lot of the time. Like they've used Kyle Hayes sparingly, they've used Gerard Hegarty here and there, Keane Lynch here and there, and the new lads who've stepped up like Micheál Houlihan, Donncha O'Dowling, Adam English as well. Like they've got, that's the thing with Limerick, is that they got to an under 20 All Ireland final last year. So like the production line is not slowing down. It's not slowing down at all. And I think it's actually the fact that they've got to the league final, I think is actually quite worrying for the rest of the country, because like they haven't played, like there's been times where they haven't looked at their best, but then they'll just turn it on. They seem to be able to move through the gears. Like against Tipperary, you were looking at it, and at times you're thinking, yeah, Tipperary are bang up for this. They have a way of playing here against Limerick. And, this is going to be the moment for Liam Cahill to finally get a big win against Limerick. But then out of nowhere, Limerick just flip the switch, turn it on, turn the game around and win it, and win it comfortably in the end. And that seems to be the difference with Limerick. Like they, there's been so many times in the last couple of years where they don't look at their best, but then they'll be able to just switch it and turn it on. And, when players are injured or players are unavailable, they seem to find an answer. And, even looking at some of the younger players from previous years who come in, like Cahill O'Neill, who came in, looked very, very impressive at different times as well. Shane O'Brien as well has come in this year. So like they've got a lot of very, very good players, Limerick. And I think it is worrying for the rest of the country that they haven't been at their strongest. They have rotated at times throughout the league. It's not like they've gone full strength, and they've still been able to come through, win 5 out of 6 games, and here they are now going into a league final. So yeah, massive occasion for both sets of teams. But Kilkenny at the same time, like they'll take confidence because TJ Reid hasn't played. Owen Cody's kind of come in and out, or kind of came in towards the end of the league. Still have most of Ballyhale lads to kind of come back in. So yeah, no, it definitely means more for Kilkenny, but Limerick look like they're in championship mode without even their best players playing, and that is kind of worrying for the rest of the country.
Definitely is, and definitely you mentioned that the form Limerick are on is worrying for the rest of the country. When you look at the league form that Limerick are on, you were saying it was championship form, and when you look at their scores, they have 26 different scores throughout all the games in the league, and that's only in 6 games. Like, it's not going to slow down. The talented Limerick have isn't going to slow down. You mentioned Shane O'Brien there, Adam English, Aidan O'Connor coming into the panel. Donegal Dawley's been absolutely excellent, scored a brilliant goal against Clare in match day 2. So Limerick still have players rolling along the tongue, and they still have John Coyley and Paul Connacht there in the backroom team, giving out orders, and bad place to be in for Limerick considering they're chasing a fourth All-Ireland in the row. And the question is with this Limerick team, can they eclipse that great Dublin football team in winning 6-7 in a row? Because it looks as if this way, I know there's good teams in hurling by their own right, including Kilkenny themselves, but when you look at Limerick's talents rolling off the tongue, it doesn't look like anybody's going to stop them, even this season, even this early on the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think they've been flying, as you said, and the fact they're getting so many different scores, so many different, options coming through their side. Underage is going strong. It's been fantastic, and I think if you're a Limerick supporter, like it's, you look at it and like I know a lot of people have drew the comparison to the Dublin 6-in-a-row team, and I think it's very true. I think it's very, very true. And they've won 3 in a row. I think they're I think they're comfortably going to win it again this year. I just don't see anyone really who's going to put it up to them. To be honest with you, I think you'd look at Kilkenny, Galway, maybe Cork, Clare a little bit, but I think all of those sides, I think Limerick just have the better of, and they've proven it. They've proven it in the last couple of seasons. So. I think with the fact they've had so many options, so many different players, younger lads coming in, things are looking good for Limerick. And the fact that they can, Kilkenny will look at this game and think, who do we worry about? Like, do we worry about Cian Lynch, Grode Hegarty, Cole Hayes when they mightn't even play? And then do we worry about the, fresh new lads like Shane O'Brien, Adam English, Micheál Houlihan? Like, very hard to prepare for this game for Derek Ling because there's so much to be worried about. You even look at someone like Seamus Flanagan used here and there, Tom Morrissey, these lads, like they've just, they've rotated heavily Limerick, and it's made it very, very hard for opposition teams to figure out what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Limerick perform in this game. And before we get into the prediction, like Kilkenny have done brilliant in the league so far, especially Drennan, who's scored 2 goals and 65 points, and TJ Reid. Like I wonder, would TJ Reid actually let Billy Drennan take the frees? But in the form that the young man's in, you'd have to give the free to him because he's been absolutely outstanding. You look at Mossy Keoghan as well, scoring a couple of goals. He's been absolutely outstanding. And Kilkenny have done well in their own right, but albeit I don't want to be mean to Kilkenny and all that, but like Division 1B is probably a lower standard than Division 1A, if that's fair to say. And Kilkenny have done well against those teams in their own right, but like this is going to be a major step up for the likes of Billy Drennan and Mossy Keoghan and all them.
It is, definitely is. And like as you said, Billy Drennan's been fantastic. I think I've seen your stats during the week. I think he scored 265 this year in the entirety of the league, which I think is an extremely impressive tally for a new lad coming in. And as you said, like, the team that they beat in the under-20 All-Ireland final last year was in fact Limerick. So Kilkenny, the production line is definitely not slowing down in Kilkenny either. Like they're bringing through fresh faces into the team. And it could only be a positive, the fact that, they still have TJ Reid to come back in. They still have Owen Cody to sort of cement himself back in the side. You've seen Mossy Keoghan step up. Pádraig Walsh in a new role has been brilliant. Dara Corcoran still has to come back in. So I think from a Kilkenny perspective, like they're going very, very strong. And I think for Derek Ling's first season, like they definitely will take a lot of positives. Like, you were worried a little bit for them when they lost to Tipperary, but at the same time, the fact that they've come back and, shown that resolve and gotten on to a league final, I think is huge. And, I think they can afford to go full tilt a little bit more here, in my opinion, with the fact that, it's a chance for a silverware. And as well, let's not forget in the Leinster Championship, Kilkenny don't need to be at their best a lot of the times because the quality in Leinster is just not the same as Munster. So I think it makes for an extremely fascinating game. And excited to see it come Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be a very interesting game. But if you were to call it, would you say Limerick or Kilkenny to win the game? Like Limerick, they've shown the league form, a champion in the league so far. Do you think they'll continue that and eventually win the league on Sunday?
I think they will. Yeah, I don't think it'll be perfect, and I think you might see maybe a similar game to Tipperary, or even a few of the other league games that they've had this year where they haven't looked at their best. And there'll be times where Kilkenny go 3-4 points up, or 1 or 2 points up. Kilkenny will probably start the better, and you'll think Limerick don't look at it, and are Limerick going to have enough? But I think the more the game goes on, the more Limerick will settle into their groove. The more Paul Connacht and John Coyley will make tactical changes in game to change the outcome. And I think Limerick will prove too strong. I think they have the options off the bench, whether they start the senior lads or whether they start the younger lads. They've got players who can come on and impact the game, probably more so than Kilkenny. So yeah, you'd fancy Limerick to come through. I think by maybe 3 or 4 points. But look, it's a big game for Kilkenny, and you would expect them to really get after Limerick and go after them, because I think psychologically beating them in a big final would be not a big statement, but it would be definitely, it would definitely give the Kilkenny lads a lot of confidence going into the All-Ireland. But I fancy Limerick.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be a very, very interesting game. I'd probably have to go Limerick to win the game as well. Kilkenny will give it a good fight, but you have to expect Limerick to easily come up with trumps to this game. But Kilkenny will definitely have their say in the Summer Championship, and obviously the Hurling Championship, I think, will start in 2 weeks' time. Correct me if I'm wrong now, Aaron, but it should be a very interesting few weeks ahead in the Hurling season, despite the fact Limerick seem so far ahead of everybody else. And the championship does start to an extent in the hurling as well as the football this weekend. If you count the Joe McDonagh Cup, that starts this weekend. Obviously, there's a few games to go through. There's a down against Kerry in Ballycran on Sunday, or Saturday, should I say. Carlow against Kildare in Netwatch Cullen Park, and Offaly against Laois in O'Connor Park, Tullamore. So some interesting games here, especially that Offaly Laois game, because Offaly obviously won Division 2A. Laois obviously got relegated for Division 1. So two evenly matched sides there. The other games are interesting in their own right. When you look at Carlow, Kildare will be interesting to see how they bounce back after their loss in the league final last weekend. Carlow still have brilliant players like Mayo and all them players for Carlo. So yeah, both them games, the first games I mentioned, should be interesting, but you have to argue that Offaly Laois is the pick of the bunch here.
Absolutely, yeah. Like it's two sides. I know Offaly haven't been in the Lee McCarthy for a good couple of years now, but they have played Division 1 hurling, and Laois, as we know, this is the first time they've been in the Joe McDonagh, I think, since 2019 off the top of my head. So yeah, like you'd look at it and you think like the Joe McDonagh looks very, very exciting. Like I think it's wide open, to be honest with you. You look at probably Laois as the favourites. Offaly probably is the second favourites. I think it probably is between them two. But look at Kildare's progress this year. Like they finished on top of Division 2A, didn't get promoted in the end, but they're moving very, very nicely. And although they're the Christy Ring champions from last year, like they're going to be gunning for the Joe McDonagh, and I think they're going to be a very difficult team for sides to play. And you can never rule out Kerry. Like Kerry are one of them that you look at it and think, is the standards going to keep being there? Do they have enough in the tank to get back to another Joe McDonagh Cup final, because they've been there so many times? And then you look at the other two in Carlow and Down. Like Carlow were, a Lee McCarthy side not too long ago. A lot of very good players in there, like Marty Kavanagh and a few others. I think Chris Nolan was another player that was always impressed with there. And Down, to be fair, like Down were actually not far away from getting into the Joe McDonagh Cup final last season. So yeah, like looking at the Joe McDonagh, it might be, I think it might be wide open. And, even looking at who gets relegated there, like I think there's going to be a side that gets relegated that you'd be like, that's a bit of regression there. So yeah, very, very excited for it. But no, looking forward to it. Probably in terms of the games itself, like I'd probably, just looking at the games here again, like I'd probably back Laois to get the better of Offaly. I think maybe by the smallest of margins there. Probably go with Kildare to get the victory versus Carlow. And I think down in Kerry, is that in Kerry or is it in Down?
Yeah, it should be very interesting games, all right. And yeah, in terms of my predictions, I'll probably go Offaly to beat Laois, so I'll go against you there. I'll probably go that Kildare will beat Carlow, and I'd say Kerry. Even though it is in Down, I think Kerry should win the game. Down should then put up a Kerry are definitely the better team, and obviously in the Joe Donald Cup final in the last years unlucky. So, and it'll be interesting to see if they reach another final yet again. And yeah, we'll leave the preview. Cheers to the guys that watched the video. Give it a like, subscribe to the GAA Statsman. Obviously follow my accounts on Instagram, TikTok, all those social media platforms. Follow the GAA Statsman website as well, and obviously follow Aaron on GAA Fan TV. Subscribe to his channel. I think he's nearing 3,000 subscribers at the moment, so pretty good going. So make sure you subscribe to him as well. So thanks for coming on today, Aaron, and enjoy the action this weekend.
Perfect. Yeah, brilliant, Matthew. Cheers very much for having me on.